Well, so I'm here with Harry Olson of Harry's Gardens. Thanks for having us here today, Harry.
Love to have you.
Yeah, I'm really glad to be back. I was here earlier this season before everything had really fruited, and now it's quite filled out, and I'm really excited to see it. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I told you it would be better.
Yeah, yeah, much more impressive.
Well,
Well, so could you tell us a little bit about your place? Like, kind of just give us the setting of what you're doing here.
I moved here in 2011. I'd always had a flat garden,
Okay,
and
like just in the ground, kind of.
yeah, just yeah, and I wanted a smaller place. I'm 76 now. I want to garden till I'm 90. So it had to be small, but it had to be big enough that I could have a garden, the new house. So this is it. It's 20 feet from the back door to the back fence. The yard's 75 feet wide, and there's about a 20-foot around the corner here, a little L. And in that, I have four raised beds dedicated to vegetables. I have a raised bed that is a combination of blueberries and strawberries. And then I have a 35-foot grape arbor with
Yeah,
five
right,
five
yeah.
different kinds of seedless grapes. I also have a greenhouse, which is 8 by 8. Um, I probably could never eat everything I could just grow in the greenhouse. I have, I have like 6 foot high peppers in there, and gardening kind of fills a human need,
Hmm.
and uh, but beyond that, I like to eat vegetables and things. And when you go to the store, the tomato you buy, you can almost bounce it and it won't break, and it tastes about the same. By growing your own, you get to pick the varieties, lots of stuff. I mean, almost nothing that I grow would you ever find in a store.
Yeah.
They're all way better than what's in the store. They
Oh yeah.
taste better. Um, it just gives you a lot of control. And you know where it's been. I don't spray this stuff. So I know I'm not eating anything from, a chemical company.
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and it's really delicious. The other thing is they have to pick it early to ship it at the store. I pick it the, I mean, I eat it the day I pick it, which is the day it's ripe.
It tastes the
When it's
best.
ready and its full sweetness and all of its glory. And that's probably a really good reason
Yeah.
to do this.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've not had a situation where being self-sustaining uh, has been a need for us, but I have that capacity. I mean, if they shut down a lot of stuff, I could still survive and my neighbors would survive. So it was a lot of fun. Okay.
Yeah.
I have upwards of a couple of hundred people visit. And to show them the possibility, and then I teach it all over the state, vertical gardening, to show them the possibilities, what they could do in a very small space. They don't go out and look for this sort of thing, so they find it here.
Cool.
And I get great pleasure out of that.
Or what do you think might be something that would really help encourage someone to kind of take take the next step and stop thinking about it and get in and start doing it?
Uh, like I said, I have whole garden clubs and
Yeah.
all
Hmm.
here. But a lot of people, even some of the people in garden clubs, they they like to garden, but they really live in these small
Yeah.
areas. And if you can go and see something like when they come here, they, oh, well, seeing is believing, okay? And you know, one of these tomato plants, I mean, 18 inches square got you covered. Uh, Almost anybody has that. You could put it up in your flower bed. And the trellising, I mean, uh, they just they just have never seen it before.
Mm.
And when they see it, I just love to hear them say, I could do that at my house.
Yeah.
Okay? And it's kind of the seeing is believing. So
Mm.
I hope when you show the pictures from this, they'll see some of this and try to imagine how I could do this. And but it's kind of delightful. The serious ones, I ask them to send me pictures, and they do. And it does work. And they didn't think they could garden. Just
Yeah.
didn't have any space. One of the things that I have in my garden here is a columnar apple. Well,
Mm.
lots of people like to have an apple tree. If you got about minimum space, 10 or 12 feet square, that works. Most people don't have
Yeah,
that.
yeah, to dedicate to one tree.
Yeah, a columnar apple is a special kind of apple that has a central stem. It grows its fruit tightly against that. They're full size. They're wonderful. People see that and say, I could have an apple tree.
I've got 2 square feet. I could put it in.
That's all it takes.
Yeah.
I discovered how much better things do vertically. I mean, they tell you don't, obviously don't step on your tomatoes or your melons or whatever on the ground. Uh, when you fertilize, don't put fertilizer on them. When you water, don't get the leaves wet. How do you do that when they're all laying on the ground?
Yeah.
That's a no-brainer when they're vertical.
Yeah.
I
Because they're
mean,
all out of the way already.
they're
You
all
just go
out of
right
the
in
way, and they get more sun, better ventilation. I mean, I could not in my wildest dreams eat all the food I produce. All my friends and neighbors, they get probably 95% of it.
So I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the steps that you've taken to really increase your production. You've mentioned vertical gardening, and then you've talked about just like planning it out a bit more and structuring things a bit more. What else
Well,
would you say?
if you don't have horizontal space,
Mhm.
you better make good use of your vertical space.
Mhm.
And that's what I have done. Kind of key to a lot of it, well, really two things. I I built tomato cages that are about 8 feet tall, and I I grow grafted tomatoes, which is and grafted peppers and things, which is another secret here of success.
Yeah.
But I mean, all this stuff out here that you'll see today, it's out the top of the 8 foot, and it's been probably had 2 or 3 feet cut off, and it continues to grow. I mean, they're just such exuberant, productive plants. So, I mean, you get a lot of plant, and well, 16 inches square and 8 feet high, and it's really easy to harvest.
Yeah.
Okay, because I mean, they're all just you walk up and you reach out, no bending, no.
Yeah. And everything's held up, similar to as you said at the beginning about like trying not to get water on leaves or
Right.
the fertilizer or anything
Right.
like that. It's also everything's held up and back so that you can just
Right.
reach in and
Right.
you see the fruit is ready and you just reach in and grab it immediately. Yeah.
So for tomatoes, and I have people who grow cucumbers in the same kind of a cage, but I have a trellising system that we'll look at later that I developed that's very inexpensive and super strong, and lets me grow. Well, you're going to see today, I have one grafted cantaloupe on a 3 foot wide, 6 foot high trellis. It's got 15 cantaloupes on it. Okay, and I mean they're not ripe yet, but last year all the cantaloupes were over 5 pounds each. Ambrosia cantaloupes. Part of what I do every year is try new things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's one of the benefits that you get growing it yourself is that you do get to make these choices. You're not stuck with
absolutely.
whatever someone shows up to sell you. It's actually
Right.
I went out and picked some things that I thought would be neat and interesting.
Yeah. It's anyway, a lot of fun. But the trellising lets you, and you'll see when we look at my beds. When I built the beds, I embedded PVC where you can just slide a trellis down in. So I mean, I can populate three sides of a bed with trellises in 2 minutes and take them out just as fast.
There you go. Yeah.
So again, very easy, very, very clean. Other interesting benefits, like against the fence over there, I typically grow peas, and I pick all the low-hanging peas, but then they usually grow about 3 feet above, twisting together.
Oh, yeah.
And I see all those peas up there. I'm not going after them. Okay? But then a strong west wind will come, and it will topple it over down to where I can get them. Okay? But by that time, this is the end of the season. But so I don't wrestle with that. I just go behind it and I cut all the roots off.
Yeah, like isolated and held up and away from the ground. That fact that, yeah, you can just come in and lop it away from the roots, and now your whole harvest and cleanup and whatever is wherever you want it to be, whatever makes it easy. It was 8 feet vertical, now it's at hip height and 8 feet horizontal.
Yeah. I would encourage anybody who wants to really get into gardening, align yourself with some like-minded people. Okay, so when somebody else tries a sun gold and they say, "Oh my God, that's the sweetest thing I've ever..."
This is the cherry tomato you should grow.
Well, it just saves you some experimentation, okay? You can grow a sun gold, and you benefit from other people's experience, and then try things. I have a staple of things that I absolutely have to have every year, and then everything else is a trial, looking for something better to maybe replace one of my staples with. If you have a problem, just figure out, the internet's full of amazing sources of solutions, and be a cautious internet user. Not all the information is good, but you can kind of tell. Look at the source but anyway, it's great. It'll make your day. You'll love going out every day and checking your plant out and picking the absolute ripest.
Yeah.
And chowing down. I find raised beds to be very helpful. For openers, we're never going to garden better than the soil we garden in. I mean, you could be a wonderful gardener in junk soil, and you're probably going to have a junk garden. By having a raised bed, I have total control over that. I mean, soil 18, 19 inches deep. And I built the soil at the same time, and I rotate crops through it, so I can treat them all pretty much the same. And annually, I just do a soil test and amend them to being perfect. And that's part of why everything grows so well.
That was going to be a question I had with this ramped up level of production. There's surely a decent amount of fertility amendment that's going in to kind of counterbalance what you're harvesting out, right?
Well, I start out with 60% compost, 40% real sandy loam. And that's actually terrible soil, because when you do a soil analysis, it's got almost toxic levels of phosphorus and potassium, and you can't find the nitrogen. It's all used up.
Yeah.
And so you've got to amend that back in. The pH will be too high. It'll be 7.3 or something, and you want it down to 6.5. So you amend that stuff, get the pH where it belongs, get some nitrogen back in the soil, and you get it stabilized. and then every year is just a maintenance thing. I skipped 1 year because it's $35, and I just take samples, like 3 samples out of every bed, put them together, and get one soil test. Well, I'll save $35. What I didn't know is a highly organic soil like that will, as it breaks down, become more acid. I was almost the next year when I did test it, I was almost a whole, I was like
You're at like
5.6 or something,
wow.
which
Yeah.
nothing except the blueberries would like.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like everything else. You need to invest a little if you really want to excel. I mean, who'd think in a year you'd lose a whole point of pH? And a point of pH is like catastrophic. I have a video of me turning the soil in the spring, and I turn it with a pitchfork, not a spade. In days of old, they used to jump on a spade, you know, and wiggle it, or a shovel. And this, it's just a pitchfork. And you just take it and you bury it 12 inches deep. And it's like planter mix.
Just turning, just going
It just
right
turns
through
and just crumbles.
Mm.
And in the video, I said, you know, this may be the best part of gardening. I said, this is so easy. It takes me about 5 or 6 minutes and the whole bed is turned. And it's just ready for seeds, if that's what you want to put in there. So raised beds are a big part. Trellises are a huge part. You talk about why it's so amazing. Grafted vegetables are a big part of it. With tomatoes, when they're grafted, they produce considerably earlier. The fruit are considerably larger. You get a lot more fruit, up to 10 times as much, usually probably like 4 or 5 times. You have just enormous disease resistance. Now, I don't have a tomato disease problem, but for people who do, they're an answer to prayer because they have just incredible disease resistance. And then the thing nobody talks about, but I think is perhaps the coolest thing of all, when we grew side by side, grafted and ungrafted, the ungrafted ones died and were laying dark brown on the ground. And the grafted ones were still going gangbusters. They produce at least a month longer at the end of the season. So I have these pictures of this regular brandywine laying on the ground, the regular one, and there's all these giant brandywines hanging off this grafted plant. Well, I tell you, just that one plant would have convinced you to become a grafted vegetable gardener.
Yeah. Earlier crop, greater fruit size, more like a greater yield, and then a longer fruiting season.
I mean, like there's nothing wrong with this picture.
Yeah. So there's got to be some kind of catch, and that catch being they are more either expensive to buy or laborious to make yourself.
You know, I now actually teach grafting down here at the junior college, off and on, to the advanced plant propagation class. And you can do it, it's not a problem. The problem is, if you want like one Sun Gold, one Brandywine, it's a big pain because you've got to grow rootstock and the plants you want to end up with, and they have to be exactly the same size.
Like diameter of the little...
when you graft them, okay? And it's like almost $1 a seed for the grafted one. So what you end up doing is planting every few days that brandywine. So when the grafted one is ready. You just look down the row,
Okay.
okay, and so you take your one. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Anyways, I encourage people to just first year, buy yourself 2 or 3 grafted, plant them, and then you won't need to be sold anything because you'll never want to go back. The same thing applies to peppers. The cantaloupes that we're talking about, ambrosia with 15 on that 3x6 grafted. They would be, I actually did the pre-trial testing on the melons before they went to market. And on the ambrosia, I got one about maybe 4-inch off the regular plant, and I got 5 or 6 like 5-pounders off the grafted one. And that's before I knew how to grow them.
Yeah.
Another really interesting thing with a grafted pepper is it doesn't just have like some fruit in there. The only way you can really describe it is it sets fruit so heavily in the middle, it's like somebody poured some in there. They're just like everywhere. Okay, not a bad problem.
Yeah. You're picking so many off of one plant that you used to would have taken you 6 or 7 plants to pick that much.
You're just taken back when you look at it and say, oh my God, look at how many. You'll see that over there today. Yeah, kind of amazing. So I guess the big things, raised beds, trellising, and cages. That will get you, no matter how bad, I mean, you could live in rock and have a wonderful garden in a raised bed. And don't be, a lot of people do like 8 or 9 inches, and that's okay. But I prefer to go, actually it's 2 cinder blocks high and a cap. Just great medium, test it, so it's always prime. And then have fun.
I know the grafting tends to avoid a lot of the soil-borne problems for these crops, but is there anything else that you're running into?
I one year had some late blight, but only 1 year. I mostly don't have any pressure because of the grafted tomatoes. In the greenhouse, every few years I'll get like aphids. Like this year, don't have any aphids. Last year didn't have any aphids. But that can happen, and we just give them a bath and insecticidal soap and neem if we have to. The main destroyer of my garden is powdery mildew. It decimates squash, cucumbers, and that's what you see over there right now. I couldn't give away all the cucumbers until the powdery mildew showed
Until the
up.
powdery mildew catch up and slow down the
So now there are things you can do. Neem actually is pretty effective, but I really try not to spray. My son sprays to control the neem, and he does great. Takes care of the powdery mildew fairly well. Now, my favorite cucumber is a lemon cucumber. And by the way, you get grafted cucumbers too, and they have some enhanced resistance. But lemon cucumbers are particularly vulnerable to powdery mildew. And 1 year I talked him into grafting
some lemon cukes for you.
Yep. And it's still got powdery mildew, but the plant was so vigorous and going so wild that it stayed ahead of it. Okay?
It just outgrew the mildew.
No, it just really did. Got to get defoliated from the bottom, but the plant was running from it vertically, and so that was a great year. vertical gardening solves some of your problems. You get all your leaves wet. That helps grow things you don't want growing on your plants. But when everything's up in the air, you can water on the ground. You don't get so much as a drop on the leaves of the plant. So helps. And plus, when you grow up, tremendous exposure to the sun. I mean, they're out there. And tremendous air circulation. So they're just very healthy. It's a very healthy way to garden.
Do you see anything on the horizon for urban agriculture or urban growing as like a big impending challenge?
Yards get smaller and smaller. Mm-hmm. You got condos. I have people, have a deck in their apartment.
Yeah.
And we for like 4 years did in the ground grafted tomato demonstration project at the Oregon Garden. But we had so many people that said, we don't have any ground. We just have a deck. And so the last couple of years, we actually bought a bunch of containers and brought them up there and to show people what they could do in a container. And there's a lot that you can do. Just put good soil in it, take care of it, keep it watered. In a container, it's especially important to keep it watered because in hot weather,
It'll just dry up, and it's not connected to any
reserve
or anything.
There's no well of the earth below it. It's just when it dries up, it's just the leaves start folding. But we grew watermelons and those. We did lots of different kinds of things.
Were you doing any grafted plants in the potted?
We did. Now I have to tell you, you really should have half a wine barrel is what they recommend.
Yeah, I was wondering. You probably need a pretty large pot.
Yeah, because the normal tomato, when you exhume it, it's got a root about like this. Well, it's about like this with a grafted one. And when I exhumed mine, 10 feet out when we pulled and broke them off, it was still the size of pencils out there.
The roots?
The roots. So
at 10 feet.
Yeah. So
that's crazy.
if you have a pot, like this and this high, it's going to be a solid root ball by the end of the summer. So, and then it's especially important to keep it watered because it doesn't have any storage.
Yeah. And it's just so huge that it's simple need, like let alone a hot or windy day. It's just daily need is large.
Now, the other thing is they have, and I've not really used them, they have some special grafted plants that are designed to maybe get 4 feet high. For containers like that. People can go to their website, loghouseplants.com, and see what the possibilities are. Look in the varieties list. And they also have their retail distributor, who they sell them through. So if you found something really interesting, you can find somebody who's got it and sells it, and you can get one. You just got to kind of work for it. if you just go down to Bi-Mart and the big rack down there, you're going to get kind of standard issue tomatoes. Really nothing's, but none of them are going to be grafted. And not even a lot of choice in varieties. So they graft like 80 different varieties. So I'm totally sold. I teach that all over the state and adjoining states. And like, I didn't know, but the people on the coast, pretty much can't grow tomatoes. I went up to Astoria to speak, and I was talking about growing grafted tomatoes, and their eyes kind of glazed over. I mean, enough that I said, "Don't
You guys aren't excited about this?
Don't you guys like growing tomatoes?" "Oh, we'd love to grow tomatoes. You just can't grow tomatoes." I said, "Well, sharpen your pencil.
Yeah.
If you do what I tell you, you can." And they did. And I said, "You have to send me pictures." And they had tomatoes.
That's super exciting. That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It makes my day if I can teach people how to garden in a way that gives them what they want, lets them do things they never thought were possible. I mean, I just, anybody who wants to learn, I'm there. So, you know, 2 places you might go. I have a Facebook page. It's Harry's Garden on Facebook, and then I have a website called harrysgarden.org, O-R-G. And I apologize, I've got thousands of pictures that haven't made it on there yet, but there's a lot on there. And all the instructions on how to build raised beds with pictures and technique and sizing and everything, and the complete instructions on how to build the trellises, the sources, all with pictures. That's all on harrysgarden.org.
Okay, awesome.
So,
awesome.
You know, it even tell you where to go and what to order. So people find that helpful.
Is there anything in particular that you feel like we should talk about, but I didn't bring it up? I didn't give you the question?
No, I think you're really doing a good thing here.
Thank you.
We mostly need to plant in people's mind the possibility. And you're going to show them it's not just possible, but you can do it in spades if you want to. And, I encourage people, the only bad garden is the one that never got planted.
There you go. That's a good phrase, yeah.
Okay? And don't assume you can't. Your neighbor couldn't, so you can't. Don't assume any of that. Okay? You're better than your neighbor. And you have some secrets that will help you. And if you use some of what we talked about today, it'll really help you. You start sticking in grafted tomato plants, and your neighbors will be. I recently taught a class, and when the class was over, this lady stood up and she said, "This is the 3rd time I've been to his presentation." Okay, you know, I always come hoping to get some new morsel, and she said, "Everything he says is true." And she said, "My neighbor and I have big gardens right next to each other. And after the first year when I had all my grafted stuff in there, the next year the neighbor would grow nothing but grafted." Yeah, I mean, it's seeing is believing.
Yeah.
And now, I'll plug one tomato plant.
Sure,
So
yeah.
if I could only grow one tomato, it would be one called Super Fantastic.
That sounds awesome.
Okay.
That sounds fantastic.
And I mean, it's probably 12 ounces. The biggest ones are like 2 pounds, mostly 12 ounces a pound. More than enough to cover bread when you have a BLT. But they're absolutely perfect. I don't really like these. A lot of heirlooms have these deep ridges, and the top.
And then the bottoms get all weird.
Yeah, the bottoms are all, So you get one slice out of the middle. These things are good top to bottom there, and they're very productive. They're pretty early, and they have just a killer taste.
Did we miss them, or are they still?
Oh no, they're over here.
Cool.
You'll see them today.
Nice.
But you know, when people say I could just grow one, what should I grow? Now, don't confuse it with fantastic.
No, super fantastic. is
Super
where it's at.
fantastic. Completely different tomato. Fantastic is a pretty productive kind of ho-hum tomato. Okay? don't grow ho-hum tomatoes.
Yeah, it's not.
If you have really limited space, look for a place where you could use one of the techniques that we've talked about. Start small. You'll find other ways to do it, other places to put it. And if you really lose control, you'll be like I am. The whole place is edible. Except for a row of roses for my wife.
There you go. Yeah, just start small, and then you'll have open the gate, no going back.
Yeah. I really enjoy giving it away and having people come here and pick it. And I'm a Christian guy, and I think we need to share and bless each other, and this is a big blessing to a lot of people.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. Thanks, Harry.